Melissa, that sigh of relief from the automakers coming after White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters the one-month exemption was at the request of the automakers in order to ensure they were not at an economic disadvantage. It comes after Trump spoke yesterday with the leaders of Ford, GM, and Stellantis. And that's the good news, but there is much more to come here on the tariff front. Cars made up a big chunk of trade with Canada and Mexico, maybe 15 or 20%, but tariffs still remain in place on everything else. Canada's foreign minister also said in the last hour that conversations are still ongoing with the U.S., but that they are very fluid and that Canada could potentially use oil and gas exports as a lever if tariffs continue, suggesting potentially more retaliation to come there. And we also have two big dates to watch. One is next week's steel and aluminum tariffs. Those are set for March 12th, and they have already been signed into law. Canada and Mexico will be deeply impacted by those, are likely to retaliate. The auto industry also going to get caught up there as well. The other date is April 2nd. Those are the reciprocal tariffs. And Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, he said today Canada and Mexico will be targeted with those, and that while the reciprocal tariffs will start on the 2nd, they could continue to trickle out over weeks or even months. So when it comes to the tariff front, guys, we may be just at the start of all of this. Melissa.
All right, Megan, thank you. Megan Casella. So a reprieve for the automakers for now. Inventory is pegged at 84 days of inventory in the United States, according to Car Guru. So they have a few months. Maybe if they can pull forward some production now, they can be covered for longer.
So a couple things from this. So we had a conversation about GM last night. We actually said, you know what, it just traded down to levels we saw in October. It's a logical place for it to stop and potentially bounce from. It happened today, and I think it will continue to move higher. The other thing is the broader market, and it's, in my opinion, not coincidence. Look at where we stopped today in the S&P, 5,700 basically. Go back and look at where the S&P was on Election Day, 5,700. Don't think for a minute that this administration doesn't have that sort of peg somewhere as sort of a benchmark as to how low they'll allow the market to go in the short term.
Yeah, I would say today's rally was not particularly impressive. You look at the S&P up 1%. You look at the weakness in banks on a relative basis. We already talked about energy. It just didn't seem that broad-based. We saw some stuff they've gotten really hit hard, probably more for fundamental reasons if you look at some of the mega cap tech over the last few weeks. So not a particularly impressive rally, in my opinion.
Yeah, what do you make about the weakness in banks?
You know, it's interesting. I've been at the RBC Financial Conference for the last couple of days, and I'll tell you the tone was very constructive. I mean, they're acknowledging the impact that tariffs are having on dialogue, but in terms of credit, things still look really good. In terms of day-to-day business activity, they're not really seeing any problem develop. So I came away from the last 2 days thinking the plumbing of the economy is pretty good. I have liked banks, I've liked financials, and I've liked banks over cap markets, and I'm sticking with that.
Yeah, look, the rhetoric on M&A and slowdown and deal flow, I mean, that's been the big headline over the last couple of days, but the bottom line is dereg for banks is a great story right now. Watch the yield curve, though. It is flattening.
Yeah. Coming up, souring on Apple, the tech giant briefly falling into correction territory today. What it could mean if the last Mag 7 holdout falls even further. And speaking of the Mag 7, Tesla's been in a tailspin since the inauguration. It's now more than 40% off its own record. Will global backlash to CEO Elon Musk continue to threaten the EV maker? Don't go anywhere. Fast Money's back in 2.